Hi class, today we're going to learn about points, lines, line segments, and rays. So if you look at the screen, you see a number line, and on a number line we're used to seeing these, but there's something I want to draw your attention to. So on the number line, we usually have these arrows that are drawn. So why do we have these arrows? Well, the arrows are there to show that this is a line, and those numbers are going to go on in both directions forever. So a line never stops. So the arrows are letting you know that it's continuing on forever. So then the numbers on the number line are then different points within that number line. So I can add a point on a number line, such as this 3, and showing that that is where the number 3 would be on this number line. But I'm only looking at a section of this line because it goes on forever and ever, and therefore I cannot draw or put that on a screen. So moving into the next piece of this, now we see these 2 points. So now there's these 2 points, and we have the arrows going both directions forever. So that is still a line if we go through those points. However, we now have these points. So from inside those points, this is what we call a line segment. This is going to be part of a line, and that's usually what we're looking at when we're using a number line, is just a segment of the line. So anything between 2 points is going to be your line segment. If we look at this point on our number line, this is going to be what we would look at as a ray. So a ray is going to have a starting point, but it has to go through another point and then move on forever. So if we have our starting point and then it moves on through here, this is going to be our ray from the starting point and then moving out in one direction. So here is how we would normally see a ray. Now later in the lesson we're going to talk about naming the different points in these different lines and rays, and when that happens the ray has to go through another point. So we'll talk about that a little bit more later, but this is what we call a ray. Okay, and again it has our starting point and then it goes in one direction forever, denoted by that arrow. So now if I put 2 rays together and they are connected at a common point, that is going to create an angle. So this is how we create angles, and we worked on measuring angles before. So now when we have these 2 rays connecting using this at the same point, this is when it creates an angle that we could then measure and then decide if it's acute, obtuse, right, straight, those different angles, or we could even measure the degree if we have our protractors. So now if we look at this slide, you can see that there's a lot of different points. We can probably see that there are lines, line segment, rays. But if I asked you to explain this to me and to tell me what those different things are, it might be a little difficult. So I want you to think why that might be difficult. So you might look at it and say, well, yeah, I can see lots of different points. Okay, we see points, we see those. Okay, so pretty much every single one of these are going to be points. So then you can also look and say, well, do I see any lines? Now, if we think about a line, it has to go on forever using those arrows in both directions. So you might be able to say, yeah, I see some lines. But if I asked you to tell me what those lines are without being able to draw like I am, again, I want you to think why that might be a little bit difficult with what we have right here. So then you could say, oh, I also see some rays. And this is what I was talking to you about earlier, is a ray does have to have a point and has to go through another point, and I'm going to explain that more here in a moment, and that's going to make more sense. So it has to have a start point and go through another point. So if I asked you to tell me what these are, you might have thought by now, well, that might be a little difficult, Mrs. Pearson, because it's not labeled. So what we're going to do is we use labels, and we use these letters to help us label the different points. So then we can name our lines, our line segments, and our rays. And then we also are going to be able to name different angles and those things as well using the same criteria. So if we look at this now, if I said to tell me where a point is, you could say, or I could ask you to even show me specifically, where point B is. And you would say, oh, there's point B. Now if I said, where's point F? Now that we have labels, it's a little bit easier to show and explain that. So we can do the same thing then for our lines. So for our lines, our line segments and rays, the only thing that we have to remember is that you always have to have 2 points to name them. So you have to have 2 different points that it's going through to be able to name it. So what that means is if I was going to now name, so earlier we said, oh, well, there's a line. I know that because it has arrows going in both directions, showing that that's a line. So now if I wanted to name this, I could name it line A, C. And in this case with the line, it does not matter which letter I put first. So I could also say line C, A. So then I could do the same thing for our line down here. And I could name this line B, C. I could name it line BD, and I could even name it line BE. And I could also turn those around because all of those are going to be the same thing because it's going to be the same in both directions for a line. And this is how they would look if we wrote those out. So you put the little line with the arrows on both sides over it, and then I could name that line AC and line BE, as you see written here. So that's how you would actually write the names of those lines. So then if we want to name the line segments, we would do something very similar. But now with the line segments, you can name them different directions. So a line segment is going to be between the 2 points. So this one's a little bit easier because you just name within that point. So I could say this is line segment BC. I could say it's line segment DE. I could say this is line segment AC. But I could also say that this is line segment CA. So there's different ways that I can label these. So if I look at this next slide, this shows all the different ways. And you notice the difference here is when I write these, I do not put the arrows on the line that I put above those letters. But I can do AC, or I could write it as line segment CA. Again, this one, for example, is showing line segment BE, which would be from here to here. And it's showing line segment EB. So it's just going the opposite turnaround. It's the same line segment. Now if I look at the next page, I see our rays. Now the rays are a little bit different. For the rays, I have to look at this and I have to say, okay, I can't have just one point. I can't just say, oh, this is ray A, because I don't know, that's only one point. So you always have to have 2 of the letters. So you have to go through 2 points to do any of these, to have these names. So with a ray, the difference is that it does matter which one you start with, because if I say ray AC, that is telling you that I'm starting at A is my start point, and I'm going through C in that direction. If I do it the other direction, it's actually a different ray because it's going in a new direction, which would be going the opposite way with a different start point and going through a different point. So those are actually 2 different rays. So you do have to be careful when naming your rays in that regard. So that is going to be the basics of naming our points, lines, line segments, and rays. So now you can follow along with me on your step in on your practice page. So going through this, a straight line continues in both directions forever, like we already talked about. So when you draw a straight line, it is just a part of a longer continuous line, sorry. This part is called a line segment. So anything within here, this is a line segment. I can't see the entire line. Look at the line below. The arrows show that it continues in both directions forever. So these arrows are showing us that it's continuing in both directions forever. Point A, point B, and C are all on this same line. So the points are all on the same line. So if you look at the next part, all the points beginning at point A and ending at point B form a line segment, which would be called segment AB. What other line segments are part of this line? Point B splits the line into two parts, so each part is called a half line or a ray. A ray is named with its start point written first, followed by another point that the ray goes through. So we could look at this and we could say, well, here is ray BC. Okay. We could also do ray BA because it goes through there in one direction. So a ray is part of a line that begins at a point and continues on forever. Polygons can be described by naming the line segments that make their sides or the points that are the vertices. This can help identify shapes. So a couple of vocab words there that we might want to refresh on is a polygon. So a polygon is any shape that has straight sides, that has 3 or more sides and angles. So that is just going to be any shape that has 3 or more straight sides or angles. So it's a polygon. A vertex is the corners. It's where the different lines meet. That creates a vertex. So any point that two lines, line segments, or rays meet at are called the vertex or vertices. So if we look at this, you can use a colored pencil to trace over the polygon made by joining the points A, C, G, and F, and then say what shape that is. So you could look at A, C, G, and F, and if I connect that together, we can see that that forms everyone, that is a trapezoid. So we see that we see that trapezoid being shown there. So then we can look at different shapes within here. So what other polygons can you see and describe? So some of you might see something like C, D, E. That would be a triangle. You could maybe look and you can continue to see different polygons and shapes that are within here. So we see a lot of different triangles. There's a couple different trapezoids. And so it creates these different polygons that we can then name those as well using the same idea of naming those different points. So we could name this, we could say it's A, B, C, and you just name that as the polygon, and we would name that ABC. So if you look at the practice page that is in your assignment, it should look like this. And so we went through the practice there, and on your page you have something that looks like this. So you can look at this and it just asks you first to name 5 unique line segments that you can see on the lines below. There are different answers here, so you can check those. The answer key is also attached. Then at the number 2 says to look at the line above, so using the line from up here, and name a pair of rays that start at each of these endpoints. So you're going to start at point S first, so like right here it says to start at point S, and then name what another ray would be